Hello and welcome. In this tutorial, I will demonstrate asynchronous programming and why it is important and some common mistakes. So I have already pre-made a class called console writer. This class have two methods. The first method called write number, it iterates through 0 to 9, so less than 10, and it writes down the number I and then sleeps for a half of a second. The second method called write number 100 iterates from 100 and ends as when it's bigger than or not equal to 100, less than 110. It will write the number here and sleep for a half of a second. So the main program is initiating the class and then calling these two methods. So let's check the result. Now it's writing 0 to 9, and then you write 100 to 109. And we can see the result here. But what happened is that the main thread is being blocked. So for example, if we develop a website and if the user press on a button like get information, and the thread has to call this method and it has to call this method afterward, the main thread is blocked from doing next execution or other tasks because it's stuck in these two methods. And that can result in a method or a website that is not responsive. It can be stuck and the user cannot make other inputs, and maybe the user cannot press on some buttons and do other tasks meanwhile the user is waiting to get the information. So the main thread is being blocked, and that is really bad for a website, or for example for a desktop application or a mobile app. We need the application to be responsive. The application should be able to do other tasks while it's waiting for a task to finish. So in this situation, I want to run write number and write number 100 at the same time. I want to run them parallel. So what I can do is that I can go to my console writer class here, and I can tell that this method is an asynchronous method, and it return a task. A task is being returned when we have a void. So when you have a void, you only write task. And this method is also an asynchronous method, and it returns task. Now it complains that we are not using the await operation. So I will change thread to task.delay. Or I can take this one, delay, and this one is also task.delay. And then I can say await here. Let's pretend we are contacting the database here, or we are maybe contacting another web API. We don't want the application to stop working because it's waiting for an operation to finish. So if I run the program now, um, we come here at the end. It did not listen, it only wrote the first values and then it stopped. And that is because, and this is really important that you guys understand, when you use the keyword await and in a method I think, what it will do is that the main thread will come here and then it will jump back to whoever called this method. So it will jump back here and go to the next method here. And the same thing will happen here. It will run this first operation, and when we use the keyword await, it will jump back to whoever called this function and continue from here. So what we have to do is in the main program, we have to tell it that you are an async and that you are returning a task, because usually the main method looks like this in a console application. but you are an asynchronous method that return task. And then we also have to tell it that you should await for this to be done. Um, and if we try to run the program now, we can see that it's working now as it did in the beginning. But however, it is not running the task parallel as I wanted. And that is because I'm telling the application to wait for this method to finish, and then you go to the next method and wait for this one to finish and then continue. So if I want them to run parallel, I have to create some tasks and tell it that this is a task and these should be run and parallel, and then you can continue with the program. So if I write task and I say this is called we call it like number task is equal to console application console writer dot write number. So now this method is a task called number task. And then we can do the same thing for the next method called write number 100. And this is number 100 task. So now these two are two tasks that should be running parallel with each other. And we can also do other work meanwhile, like other work. And while these are being run parallel with each other, we're doing other work which these two tasks are not being dependent on, or these work are not being dependent on these two tasks. And then when we have finished other work, I want to tell it to await number task to finish, and then await number 100 tasks to finish as well. So it will run these two tasks parallel. It will also do this task meanwhile. And then when it comes here, it will wait for these two tasks to finish before I can come to this debugger or breakpoint, I mean. So let's check what happens. If I press start, we can see that we wrote 0, 100, and then we're doing other work. And then we can also see that these two methods are being run at the same time. So they're being run parallel with each other. And now our application is responsive to other inputs from the user. For example, if you create an app or website or desktop application, the UI won't be freezing because it's doing other tasks and the main thread is being blocked. So this is a good best practice from Microsoft that you should be using in your application. So, so what you need to take from this course is that you are able to create tasks from functions. But if you want a function to be asynchronous, you have to tell it that you're an asynchronous method. And we are returning tasks right now. In the next video, I will explain how we can return a value. And in the method, we have to tell it that we are doing an await in this asynchronous method because we are maybe connecting to the database or making a web API call or maybe getting information from a file. And while we are doing that, when we come to this await, what the thread will do is that it will jump back to the caller. But now we are telling it that you can jump out from here and you go to the next line and you start this worker. And what will happen here is when we come to the await, it will just jump out from here and just continue doing other work. So the thread is not being here anymore. But here we are telling it we are awaiting number task. So the main thread will stop here until this task has been finished. And when it has been finished, it will go to the second task and wait until you have been finished, and then I can continue. And this is a really good practice to use in your real life applications. So thank you for watching and make sure that you watch the next tutorial.